The rain hit the sidewalk hard, making small rivers that rushed toward the storm drains. Lisa Martinez pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders as she walked quickly down the empty street. Her white sneakers splashed through puddles, and she could feel the cold water seeping through the worn fabric. She checked her phone again. 20 minutes until her shift started at the hospital. 20 minutes to get money from the ATM, grab a coffee, and make it to work. The bank's ATM stood under a small roof that barely kept the rain away. Lisa could see someone already there, hunched over the machine. As she got closer, she noticed the man was tall and wearing what looked like an expensive suit. But something was wrong with the picture. The suit was wrinkled and dirty. His hair was messy, and his shoulders were shaking. Lisa stopped a few feet behind him and waited. She could hear him talking to himself, but couldn't make out the words. Then she heard the ATM beep, and the man hit the side of the machine with his fist. "Come on," he said loudly. "There has to be something." Jake Coleman stared at the screen that showed his account balance. $0.37. 3 months ago, he had been worth $47 million. He owned a company that built spacecraft engines. He had a house on the hill, 3 cars, and respect from everyone in the aerospace industry. Now he had less than 50 cents to his name. The rain had soaked through his suit jacket, the same one he wore to board meetings when he was somebody important. Now it was just a reminder of everything he had lost. His company was gone. His house was gone. His friends had stopped returning his calls. Even his own family thought he was crazy. Jake tried his card again, hoping maybe the bank had made a mistake. The machine beeped and showed the same numbers. $0.37. He needed money for food, but there was nothing left to take out. Behind him, he heard footsteps and knew someone was waiting. He turned around and saw a woman in scrubs standing in the rain. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind eyes that looked tired. She was probably a nurse or doctor, Jake thought. Someone who actually helped people, unlike him. "I'm sorry," Jake said, stepping away from the machine. "It's all yours." Lisa looked at the man more carefully. His face was thin, like he hadn't been eating well. His eyes were red, and there were dark circles under them. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. But there was something else. In his face, something that reminded her of the patient she saw in the hospital who had given up hope. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked. Jake was surprised by the question. When was the last time someone had asked him that? "I'm fine," he lied. "Just having some trouble with the machine." Lisa could see he wasn't fine, but she didn't push. She had learned from working with patients that sometimes people needed space to open up. Instead, she looked at the line of people that had formed behind them. 3 more people were waiting, and one of them was looking at his watch and making annoyed faces. "You know what?" Lisa said. "Why don't you take your time? I'm not in a huge hurry." Jake looked at her with confusion. "But there are people waiting." "So let them wait," Lisa said with a small smile. "Everyone's always in such a rush. Sometimes we all need an extra minute." The man behind them in line cleared his throat loudly. "Excuse me, but some of us have places to be." Lisa turned around and looked at him with the same calm expression she used with difficult patients. "Then you can go find another ATM. This one's busy." The man mumbled something under his breath, but stayed in line. Lisa turned back to Jake, who was staring at her like she had just done something impossible. "Why would you do that?" Jake asked. "Do what?" "Stand up for a stranger. You don't even know me." Lisa shrugged. "I don't need to know you to see that you're having a rough day. We all have them." Jake felt something he hadn't felt in months. It was small and fragile, but it was there. Hope. This woman, this stranger, had chosen to be kind when she didn't have to be. She had nothing to gain from helping him, but she did it anyway. "I used to run a company," Jake said quietly. "We built engines for spaceships. I thought I had figured out how to make them go faster than anything that had ever been built before. But everyone said it was impossible. They said I was wasting money on crazy ideas. Lisa listened without saying anything. She had learned that sometimes people just needed someone to hear them. I lost everything, Jake continued. My company, my house, my reputation. Everyone thinks I'm a failure now. Maybe they're right. Maybe. They're wrong, Lisa said simply. Jake looked at her with surprise. You don't understand. I lost $47 million chasing an impossible dream. So you failed at one thing, Lisa said. That doesn't make you a failure. It makes you someone who tried. The rain was getting lighter, but Jake barely noticed. He was thinking about what this woman had said. For months, everyone had told him he was wrong, that his ideas were worthless, that he should give up and find a normal job. But here was a stranger who didn't know anything about aerospace engineering or faster-than-light travel, and she was telling him that trying wasn't the same as failing. I should let you get your money, Jake said. Only if you're ready, Lisa replied. I meant what I said about taking your time. Jake looked at the ATM one more time, then back at Lisa. I don't think I have any money to take out anyway. Then maybe today isn't about money, Lisa said. Maybe it's about something else. Jake didn't know what she meant, but something in her voice made him want to believe her. He stepped aside and watched as she quickly got her cash from the machine. The whole transaction took less than a minute, but Jake felt like something important had just happened. As Lisa put her money in her purse, she turned back to Jake. I work at City General Hospital. If you ever need someone to talk to, ask for Lisa Martinez. I'm usually there during the night shift. Why would you offer that? Jake asked. Because everyone needs someone in their corner, Lisa said. And right now, you look like you could use a friend. She started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. And Jake, that dream of yours about faster spaceships? Maybe it's not as impossible as everyone thinks. Jake watched her disappear into the rain, wondering how she knew his name. Then he remembered he had mentioned his company, and she could have looked it up. But that didn't explain why she seemed so sure about his ideas. As he walked away from the ATM, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in months. It wasn't hope exactly, but it was close. It was the feeling that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow might be different than today. He didn't know that in 3 months he would discover something that would change the course of human history. He didn't know that the kindness of a stranger on a rainy night would be the first step in saving the entire world. All he knew was that someone had been kind to him when they didn't have to be, and that made all the difference. 3 months had passed since the rainy night at the ATM. Jake Coleman pushed his mop across the white tile floor of the Goldstone Deep Space Communication Complex. The bucket beside him was half full of dirty water, and his back ached from bending over all day. This was not the life he had imagined for himself, but it was better than living on the street. The job was simple. Clean the floors, empty the trash, and stay out of the way of the real scientists. The people who worked here were studying space, looking for signals from other worlds, measuring the movement of distant stars. Jake used to dream about building ships that could reach those stars. Now he just cleaned up after the people who studied them. It was past midnight, and most of the staff had gone home. Jake liked working the night shift because it was quiet. He could think without anyone bothering him. Sometimes he would look at the computer screens that showed data from the radio telescopes and remember when he understood what all those numbers meant. Tonight was different. As Jake cleaned the main control room, he noticed something strange on one of the monitors. The screen showed waves of data coming from the big radio telescope outside. Usually, the waves look random, like static, on an old television. But these waves had a pattern. Jake stopped mopping and looked closer. He had studied signal processing in college, back when he thought he would change the world. The pattern on the screen was not random. It repeated every few minutes, but each time it was slightly different, like someone was trying to send a message. He looked around the empty room. There was no one to ask about it. The scientists who worked here during the day probably saw this data every day and ignored it. They were looking for bigger things, more obvious signals. But Jake had learned to notice small details. That skill had helped him build engines that worked better than anyone expected. Jake sat down at the computer and started typing. The system was not password protected at night because the cleaning staff needed access to turn off the machines. He pulled up the data from the last week and began to analyze it. The patterns were definitely there. They came from different directions in space, but they all had the same basic structure. Jake spent 2 hours running the data through different programs, trying to understand what he was seeing. Finally, he found something that made his blood run cold. The signals were not random noise from space. They were communications. And they were getting stronger. Jake printed out the data and took it home to his small apartment. He spent the rest of the night and all of the next day working on it. He used his old laptop and programs he had written years ago for his company. Slowly, piece by piece, he began to decode what the signals were saying. The numbers were written in base 16 mathematics, which was different from the base 10 system humans used. But Jake had studied alien communication theory when he was developing his faster-than-light engines. He knew that any intelligent species would probably use mathematics to communicate across space. What he found terrified him. The signals contained a countdown. Something was going to happen in 847 days, and whatever it was, it involved Earth. Jake went back to work the next night, but he could not focus on cleaning. He kept thinking about the signals and what they might mean. When he was sure no one was around, he used the computers again to gather more data. The signals were coming from at least 50 different locations in space. They were all coordinating with each other, sending messages back and forth like a giant conversation. And they were all talking about the same thing. Earth. Jake knew he had to tell someone, but who would believe him? He was a janitor who used to run a failed company. The scientists here barely noticed him, and they certainly would not listen to his theories about alien communications. He decided to try anyway. The next morning, he waited for Dr. Amy Foster to arrive. She was young, maybe 30 years old, and she studied the possibility of life on other planets. Jake had heard her talking to other scientists about how to recognize signals from alien civilizations. "Dr. Foster," Jake said as she walked into the building, "could I talk to you for a minute?" Amy looked surprised. She had seen Jake around the building, but had never spoken to him. "Are you the night janitor?" "Yes, but I used to be an engineer. I think I found something important in the radio telescope data." Amy looked at her watch. She had a meeting in 10 minutes, but something in Jake's voice made her curious. "What kind of something?" Jake handed her the papers he had printed. "I think there are alien signals in the data. They're coordinating some kind of operation, and Earth is involved." Amy looked at the papers. She expected to see the kind of wild theories that people sometimes brought to the Space Center. UFO sightings, conspiracy theories, random patterns that looked like faces or words. Instead, she saw careful mathematical analysis and signal processing. That looked professional. "Where did you learn to do this kind of analysis?" Amy asked. "I used to run Coleman Aerospace Technologies. We built experimental engines for spacecraft." Amy's eyes widened. She had heard of Coleman Aerospace. The company had failed a few years ago when they tried to build something called a faster-than-light drive. Most scientists thought the idea was impossible, but the mathematical work had been impressive. "You're Jake Coleman?" Amy asked. "Yes, and I think these signals are real. I think something is coming to Earth, and we have less than 2.5 years to figure out what to do about it." Amy looked at the data again. The patterns were definitely there, and Jake's analysis looked solid. If this was real, it was the most important discovery in human history. If it was wrong, it was the delusion of a man who had lost everything and was looking for a way to be important again. "Can you show me how you decoded this?" Amy asked. Jake nodded. "I'll need access to the computers during the day. I can arrange that." But Jake, if this is wrong, if you're seeing patterns that aren't really there, it could cause panic. Are you sure about this? Jake thought about the woman at the ATM who had shown him kindness when he needed it most. She had believed in him when no one else would. Maybe it was time to believe in himself again. I'm sure the signals are real, Jake said. What they mean, I'm not completely certain. But Amy, I think we're running out of time to figure it out. Amy looked at the data one more time. The patterns were too complex to be random, too organized to be natural phenomena. If Jake was right, Earth was about to receive visitors. If he was wrong, they were about to waste a lot of time chasing shadows. Okay, Amy said. Let's see what else we can find. Neither of them knew that their decision to work together would be the first step in preparing humanity for the greatest challenge it had ever faced. The signals in the data were just the beginning. Soon, they would discover that Earth had been watched for a very long time, and the watchers had finally decided it was time to act. The countdown had already begun. 2 weeks had passed since Amy Foster agreed to help Jake decode the alien signals. They worked together every night after the day shift scientists went home. Amy had used her security clearance to get Jake access to the most powerful computers at the facility. What they discovered made both of them wish they had never started looking. Amy sat in front of 3 computer screens, her coffee cup empty beside a stack of printed data. Her eyes were red from staring at numbers and charts. For hours, Jake stood behind her, pointing at patterns in the signal data that appeared on the main screen. Look at this section, Jake said, highlighting a group of signals from the past week. The frequency is increasing. 3 weeks ago, we were getting maybe 10 signals per day. Now we're getting over 100. Amy nodded and pulled up another screen that showed a map of space around Earth. Red dots marked the locations where the signals were coming from. And they're getting closer. The nearest source was 12 light years away when we first detected it. Now it's only 8 light years out. That's impossible, Jake said. Nothing can travel that fast. Unless they have technology we don't understand, Amy replied. She had been thinking about this problem for days. Jake, I think we need to accept that whatever is sending these signals is far more advanced than we are. Jake sat down in a chair next to Amy. Over the past 2 weeks, they had become a good team. Amy understood the scientific equipment and had access to resources that Jake needed. Jake understood signal processing and had experience with technologies that most scientists thought were impossible. Together, they had made progress that neither could have achieved alone. I've been working on translating more of the messages, Jake said, pulling up a new file on his laptop. The mathematical structure is becoming clearer. They're not just coordinates and timing data. Some of these signals contain actual information. Amy leaned over to look at Jake's screen. What kind of information? Instructions, plans, and Amy. They're talking about us. Jake had spent the last 3 days working on a particularly complex signal that repeated every 12 hours. Using techniques he had developed for his faster-than-light drive research, he had finally managed to decode parts of it. What he found was a detailed discussion of Earth and its inhabitants. They call themselves a hegemony, Jake explained, scrolling through his translation notes. It's not just one species. It's a collection of different alien races that work together. They've been watching Earth for over 200 years. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. Watching us? Why? Because we're developing too fast. According to their messages, most intelligent species take thousands of years to develop space travel. Humans have gone from horse-drawn carriages to rocket ships in less than 2 centuries. They think we're dangerous. Jake pulled up another file that showed a timeline he had constructed from the alien messages. They've been monitoring our progress, waiting to see if we would slow down or destroy ourselves. But in the last 50 years, our technology has advanced even faster. They decided we need to be managed. Manage? Amy asked, though she was afraid she already knew what that meant. Population. Control. Resource allocation. They want to turn Earth into what they call a guided development zone. Humans would be allowed to live, but under their supervision. They will control our technology, our population growth, and our expansion into space. Amy stared at the data on the screen. The alien messages were cold and clinical, discussing humanity like scientists might discuss lab animals. There was no hatred or anger in the communications, which somehow made them more frightening. The aliens saw humans as a problem to be solved, not as intelligent beings with rights and freedom. How long do we have? Amy asked. Jake checked his calculations again. The countdown I found in the first signals ends in 823 days. That's when their main fleet arrives at Earth. But Amy, I think some of their ships are already much closer. How close? Maybe 6 months away. These could be scout ships or an advance team. Amy stood up and began pacing around the room. She was a scientist, trained to think logically about problems and find solutions based on evidence. But this problem was unlike anything she had ever faced. How do you defend an entire planet against aliens who have been traveling between stars for thousands of years? We have to tell someone, Amy said. The government, the military, other scientists. The whole world needs to know about this. Jake had been thinking about the same thing. Who's going to believe us? I'm a failed businessman, working as a janitor. You're a young scientist who studies theoretical alien life. Even with all this data, they'll think we're crazy. Then we get more proof, Amy said. We keep monitoring the signals and gathering evidence until no one can ignore it. Jake pulled up another file on his computer. Amy, there's something else. Something I haven't told you yet. Amy stopped pacing and looked at him. What? I think I know why they're afraid of us. It's not just our technology. It's how we think. Jake had been analyzing the structure of the alien communications for days. The messages were logical, efficient, and predictable. Each species in the hegemony seemed to follow strict patterns in how they communicated and made decisions. There was no creativity, no surprise, no unexpected solutions. Their technology is advanced, but it's also limited, Jake explained. They follow rules and procedures that have worked for thousands of years. They don't innovate the way humans do. What do you mean? Jake thought about his own experience developing the faster-than-light drive. Every expert had told him it was impossible. The laws of physics didn't allow it. But Jake had found a way around the laws by thinking about the problem differently than anyone else. Humans don't just solve problems, Jake said. We find solutions that shouldn't work, then make them work anyway. We break rules, we take risks, we try things that seem impossible. That's not normal behavior for intelligent species. Amy began to understand what Jake was suggesting. You think they're afraid of human creativity? I think they're afraid of what we might become if we're left alone. Their messages mention something they call uncontrolled development patterns. That's us. We're the species that doesn't follow the normal rules of technological advancement. Amy sat back down and looked at the alien messages on the screen. For the first time since they had started this project, she felt something besides fear. She felt anger. These aliens had been watching humanity for centuries, studying them like insects, planning to control their future. They had decided that human creativity and independence were problems that needed to be solved. Jake, Amy said, what if we could use our creativity against them? What if the same thinking that scares them could be used to defend ourselves? Jake looked at Amy with surprise. It was the first time either of them had talked about fighting back instead of just trying to warn people about what was coming. You mean use my faster-than-light drive research? Jake asked. I mean use everything. Your engineering knowledge, my access to equipment, human creativity, and problem solving. If these aliens think humans are unpredictable, maybe we should prove them right. Jake thought about the woman at the ATM who had shown him kindness when the whole world seemed to have given up on him. She had acted in a way that was illogical and inefficient, but also beautiful and important. Maybe that kind of thinking was exactly what humanity needed now. Amy, Jake said, I think it's time to do something impossible. Jake stood outside the metal fence that surrounded the Blackwood Military Research Facility in Nevada. The desert sun was hot on his back, and sweat ran down his face as he waited for the guard to check his identification. He had not been to this place in 3 years, not since his company had collapsed and his partnership with the military had ended badly. Dr. Coleman, the guard said, handing back Jake's driver's license. Dr. Woods is expecting you in Building 7. Jake walked across the dusty parking lot, remembering the last time he had been here. He and Carl Woods had been working together on experimental defense systems that used Jake's faster-than-light technology. When Jake's company failed, Carl had been forced to distance himself from the project. Their friendship had ended with angry words and broken promises. Now Jake needed Carl's help to save the world. Carl Woods was waiting in his office, a small room filled with computer screens and technical drawings. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 20 years developing weapons for the military. When Jake walked in, Carl did not stand up or offer to shake hands. You have a lot of nerve coming here, Carl said. After what happened with the Coleman Aerospace project, I'm lucky I still have a job. Carl, I know you're angry with me, Jake said, but I need your help with something more important than our personal problems. More important than the $50 million you lost. More important than the military contracts that got canceled because of your impossible theories. Jake sat down across from Carl's desk without being invited. More important than Earth being invaded by aliens in less than 2 years. Carl stared at Jake for a long moment. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Because if you are, I can recommend a good doctor. Jake pulled out a folder filled with the data he and Amy had collected. I'm not crazy, Carl. I'm trying to save humanity. For the next hour, Jake explained everything they had discovered. The alien signals, the countdown, the hegemony's plan to control human development. Carl listened without interrupting, occasionally, looking at the technical data that Jake had brought. This signal analysis looks legitimate, Carl said finally. But Jake, even if this is all true, what do you expect me to do about it? I developed defensive weapons for the military. I don't fight space aliens. The aliens use quantum tunneling for faster-than-light travel, Jake explained. But their technology has limitations that we don't have. Carl, my old FTL drive research wasn't wrong. It was just ahead of its time. Carl leaned back in his chair. He had spent 3 years trying to forget about Jake's faster-than-light theories. The mathematics had been brilliant, but the engineering challenges seemed impossible. The military had canceled the project when Jake's company collapsed, and Carl had moved on to more practical weapons research. Your FTL drive never worked, Carl said. We spent 2 years and millions of dollars trying to build it. It never worked as a drive, Jake corrected. But the principles were sound. Carl, what if we use the same technology as a weapon instead of an engine? Carl looked at the technical drawings that Jake had brought. The designs were similar to the ones they had worked on 3 years ago, but with important modifications. Instead of creating a stable tunnel through space, these designs would create unstable tunnels that collapse quickly and violently. You want to build a quantum disruptor, Carl said slowly. I want to build something that can disrupt their ships. FTL systems. If we can trap their fleet between dimensions, they can't reach Earth. Carl stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the desert. He had been working on defensive weapons for 20 years, but most of his projects were designed to stop human enemies. Missiles, aircraft, tanks. This was different. This was about stopping an invasion by beings who had technology that humanity barely understood. Even if your theories are correct, Carl said, we would need resources, funding, a team of engineers. Jake, you're a janitor now. I'm a mid-level researcher at a government facility. We don't have the authority to start a project like this. Then we find people who do have authority, Jake said. Carl, in 18 months, alien ships are going. to arrive at Earth. If we do nothing, humanity loses its freedom forever. If we try and fail, we're no worse off than we are now. Carl thought about his daughter, who was studying engineering at college. He thought about his grandchildren, who were just learning to walk and talk. If Jake was right, those children would grow up in a world controlled by aliens who saw humans as dangerous animals that needed to be managed. "There's something else," Jake said. "I think I know why the aliens are afraid of us." Carl turned back from the window. "What do you mean?" "They've been watching us for 200 years, Carl. They've seen how we solve problems, how we develop technology, how we think. We don't follow the same patterns as other intelligent species." Jake pulled out another folder that contained Amy's analysis of the alien communication patterns. "Look at how they send messages. Everything is logical, predictable, efficient. They follow rules that have worked for thousands of years. But humans? We break rules. We find solutions that shouldn't work." Carl looked at the data and began to understand what Jake was suggesting. "You think they're afraid of human creativity. I think they're afraid of what we might become if we're left alone. Carl, remember when we were working on the FTL drive? Every expert said it was impossible. The laws of physics didn't allow it, but we kept trying anyway." Carl nodded. He remembered the long nights they had spent in the lab, testing theories that other scientists said were crazy. Most of their experiments had failed, but each failure had taught them something new about the nature of space and time. "We never did get it to work as a drive," Carl said. "But we learned things that no one else knows," Jake replied. "We pushed the boundaries of what's possible. That's what humans do, Carl. We don't accept limitations." Carl sat back down at his desk and looked at Jake's designs again. The quantum disruptor was based on the same principles as the FTL drive, but used in a completely different way. Instead of creating stable passages through space, it would create chaos in the quantum field that alien ships use for travel. "This is still an impossible project," Carl said. "We would need approval from the highest levels of government. We would need funding, facilities, a team of the best engineers in the world." "Then we start small," Jake said. "We build a prototype to prove the concept works. Once we have something to show, we can convince people to support the larger project." Carl thought about the woman Jake had mentioned, the nurse who had shown kindness to a stranger at an ATM. According to Jake, that small act of compassion had led to the discovery of the alien threat. Maybe small actions could lead to bigger changes. "I have a workshop in the basement of this building," Carl said. "It's supposed to be for personal projects, but we could use it for preliminary research. If we keep quiet and work after hours, maybe we can build something without attracting attention." Jake felt hope for the first time in weeks. "You'll help me?" "I'll help you try," Carl said. "But Jake, if this doesn't work, if we can't build a weapon that can stop alien ships, what then?" Jake thought about Amy, who was back at the radio telescope facility, monitoring the alien signals and trying to learn more about the hegemony's plans. He thought about Lisa, the nurse who had believed in him when no one else would. He thought about all the people on Earth who had no idea that their freedom was about to be taken away. "Then we try something else," Jake said. "Carl, the one thing the aliens don't understand about humans is that we never give up, even when something seems impossible. We keep trying until we find a way." Carl looked at his old friend and research partner. 3 years ago, their collaboration had ended in failure and anger. Now they were about to begin the most important project of their lives. If they succeeded, they might save humanity. If they failed, they would at least go down fighting. "When do we start?" Carl asked. "Tonight," Jake said. "Amy is expecting a major increase in alien signal activity over the next few weeks. I think the hegemony is starting to move their ships into position. We're running out of time." Carl nodded and locked the technical drawings in his desk drawer. In a few hours, when the day shift went home, they would begin working on a weapon. That could either save the world or prove that some problems really were impossible to solve. Either way, they were about to find out what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. The morning sky over Phoenix looked normal until it suddenly wasn't. Lisa Martinez was driving to work when the radio in her car started making strange noises. Static filled the air, then silence, then a voice speaking in perfect English with no emotion at all. "People of Earth," the voice said, "this is the Hegemony Council. Your planet is now under our protection. Do not be afraid. We are here to help you develop in a safe and controlled way." Lisa pulled over to the side of the road and stared up at the sky. High above the city, she could see dark shapes that had not been there 5 minutes ago. They were huge, larger than any building she had ever seen, and they hung in the air without making any sound. All around the world, the same thing was happening. Over New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities, massive alien ships appeared in the sky. They had arrived exactly when Jake's countdown had predicted, 847 days after Amy and Jake first decoded their signals in the basement workshop at the Blackwood Military Research Facility. Jake and Carl were putting the final touches on their quantum disruptor when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, and Carl's computer screen showed alerts from military bases around the world. "They're here," Carl said, reading the messages that were flooding in. "Ships over every major city on Earth." Jake looked at the device they had spent 18 months building. It was about the size of a refrigerator, covered in cables and cooling units, and it had never been tested at full power. They had run small experiments that proved the theory worked, but they had no idea if it would be strong enough to affect alien ships. "Is it ready?" Jake asked. "As ready as it's going to be," Carl replied. "But Jake, we built this thing to disrupt 1 or 2 ships. There are reports of over 60 ships worldwide." Jake thought about all the work they had done, all the people who had helped them over the past year and a half. Amy had convinced other scientists to join their project. Carl had brought in military engineers who worked in secret. Even Lisa, the nurse from the ATM, had helped by organizing civilian volunteers who could spread information when the government didn't want to listen. "We knew this day would come," Jake said. "Time to see if impossible things can actually work." 3 miles away, Amy Foster was at the Radio Telescope facility, coordinating with resistance groups around the world. Over the past year, she and Jake had convinced enough people that the alien threat was real. Military units in 12 countries had been quietly preparing for this day. Scientists had developed new weapons based on Jake's research. Civilian groups had been organized to help with evacuation and communication, but none of them had expected the aliens to be so direct about their intentions. "People of Earth," the voice on the radio continued, "we have been watching your species for many years. You have developed too quickly and in dangerous ways. For the safety of the galaxy, we must guide your future development. Please remain calm and follow the instructions that will be given to you by our representatives." Amy switched her radio to a secure frequency that connected her to resistance groups around the world. "This is Phoenix Base," she said into the microphone. "The invasion has begun. All units execute Plan Chaos." Plan Chaos was Jake's idea. Instead of fighting the aliens with traditional military tactics, humans would do what they did best. They would be unpredictable, creative, and completely illogical. Every resistance group had been given different instructions, and none of them knew what the others were doing. The aliens had studied human behavior for 200 years, but they had never seen humans act with complete randomness. In New York, a group of artists began projecting giant light shows onto the alien ships, using patterns that hurt the aliens' eyes and confused their sensors. In London, thousands of people started singing different songs at the same time, creating a noise that jammed the aliens' communication systems. In Tokyo, engineers released thousands of small drones that did nothing but fly in circles around the alien ships, making it impossible for the aliens to track human aircraft. the aliens had expected military resistance that they could predict and counter. Instead, they found themselves dealing with chaos that made no logical sense. In the skies above Phoenix, the alien ship began sending down smaller craft. They looked like metal teardrops and moved silently through the air toward the ground. Lisa, who was now coordinating evacuation efforts at the hospital, watched them land in the parking lot. The doors of the alien craft opened, and beings stepped out that looked almost human, except for their pale skin and large black eyes. They carried devices that looked like weapons, but they moved slowly and carefully, as if they were following a detailed plan. "Medical personnel," one of the aliens said through a translation device. "You will continue to care for injured humans. We will provide new guidelines for medical treatment that are safer and more efficient." Lisa looked at the alien and thought about everything Jake had told her about the hegemony. They weren't evil. They genuinely believed they were helping humanity by controlling their development. But Lisa had seen what happened to people when they lost hope and freedom. She had worked with patients who gave up on life when they felt they had no control over their future. "We appreciate your offer," Lisa said politely, "but we prefer to take care of ourselves. That is not efficient," the alien replied. "Humans make medical errors that cause unnecessary suffering. We will eliminate these errors. Humans also make medical breakthroughs that save lives," Lisa said. "Are you going to eliminate those too?" The alien paused, as if it had not considered this question before. "All human development will be guided to prevent dangerous outcomes." While Lisa was talking to the aliens at the hospital, Jake and Carl were preparing to activate their quantum disruptor. They had connected it to the facility's main power grid, and Carl's computers showed that alien ships were positioned all around Earth, exactly where Jake's calculations had predicted they would be. "The ships are using quantum tunnels to stay connected to each other," Jake explained as he typed commands into the computer. "If we can collapse those tunnels, we can cut them off from their home worlds and trap them in our space." "And if it doesn't work?" Carl asked. "Then we try something else," Jake said, remembering the words he had spoken to Carl 18 months ago. "Carl, activate the disruptor." Carl pressed a button, and the machine began to hum with power. Energy readings spiked across all of Carl's monitors, and the lights in the building flickered. Outside, they could hear a strange sound like thunder, but it came from above instead of from clouds. "It's working," Carl said, watching his instruments. "The quantum field around the alien ships is becoming unstable." But the aliens were not defenseless. As soon as they detected the quantum disruption, they began to fight back. Energy beams shot down from their ships toward the source of the interference. The Blackwood facility's shields deflected the first few attacks, but Jake and Carl knew they couldn't hold out for long. "We need more time," Jake said. "The disruptor needs at least 10 minutes to affect all the ships." "We don't have 10 minutes," Carl replied, watching as alien energy beams started to break through their defenses. That was when Lisa's voice came through their radio. She was coordinating with resistance groups around the world, and her message was simple. "All units, all civilians, everyone who can hear this," Lisa said. "Do something unexpected. Right now. Whatever you're doing, change it. Be human." Around the world, people who had been following careful resistance plans suddenly began to improvise. Street musicians started playing music that confused alien sensors. Children began drawing pictures with chalk that somehow interfered with alien computer systems. Elderly people started telling stories that contained mathematical patterns the aliens couldn't understand. The aliens had prepared for military resistance, but they had not prepared for entire populations to suddenly become completely unpredictable. Their carefully planned invasion began to fall apart as humans did what they did best. They adapted, they improvised, and they refused to follow any rules at all. Jake's quantum disruptor had the time it needed to work. One by one, the alien ships lost their connection to their home worlds. They were trapped in Earth's space, cut off from reinforcements, facing a species that had just proven that human creativity was more powerful than any weapon. The real battle was about to begin. The alien ship hung motionless in the sky above Phoenix, its dark surface reflecting the morning sun. For 3 days, it had been silent. No more messages, no more landing craft, no more attempts to control the city below. Jake stood on the roof of the hospital with Lisa, Amy, and Carl, watching the ship and waiting. "Are they dead?" Lisa asked, shading her eyes as she looked up. "No," Amy said, checking the readings on her portable scanner. "I'm still detecting life signs. But their communication systems are completely quiet." Jake's quantum disruptor had worked better than anyone expected. All 63 alien ships around the world were trapped in Earth space, cut off from their homeworlds and unable to communicate with each other. For the first time in their long history, the hegemony was lost and alone. "They're trying to figure out what happened," Jake said. "They've never encountered a species that could disrupt their quantum tunnels. They don't know how to respond." Carl pointed to a small craft that was descending from the alien ship. "Looks like we're about to find out." The craft landed in the hospital parking lot, the same place where alien representatives had first tried to take control 3 days ago. But this time was different. Only one alien emerged from the ship, and it was not carrying any weapons. The alien walked slowly toward the hospital entrance, its large black eyes scanning the humans who watched from the roof and windows. When it reached the main door, it stopped and activated a translation device. "I am Commander Zix-9 of the Hegemony Fleet," the alien said. "I request a meeting with the humans who disrupted our quantum communication network." Lisa looked at Jake. "That's you." "That's us," Jake corrected. "Lisa, you were the one who organized the chaos that gave us time to work. Amy, you decoded their signals and convinced people to help. Carl, you built the disruptor. We all did this together." They walked down from the roof to meet the alien commander in the hospital lobby. Zix-9 was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. It looked at each of them carefully, as if trying to understand what made humans different from other species. "You are the ones responsible for trapping our fleet," Zix-9 said. It was not a question. "Yes," Jake said simply. "This should not have been possible. Our quantum tunnel technology has been used successfully for over 3,000 years. No species has ever found a way to disrupt it." Amy stepped forward. "Maybe no species ever tried to disrupt it. Maybe they all just accepted that your technology was superior and gave up." Zix-9 tilted its head, a gesture that seemed to indicate confusion. Why would they not accept superior technology? It is logical to surrender to a more advanced civilization. "Because humans don't always do what's logical," Lisa said. "Sometimes we do what's right instead." The alien commander looked at Lisa for a long moment. "You are the medical worker who refused our assistance 3 days ago." "I'm a nurse," Lisa said. "And yes, I refuse your help because my patients don't need to be managed. They need to be cared for. But your medical system is inefficient. Humans make errors that cause suffering and death. We could eliminate these problems." Carl laughed, a sound that made the alien take a step backward. "Commander, do you know how many times human doctors have been told that something was impossible? How many diseases we've cured that your species probably thinks can't be cured?" "We have analyzed human medical development," Zix-9 said. "It is chaotic and unpredictable." "Exactly," Carl said. "And that chaos has led to breakthroughs that logical, predictable thinking never could have achieved." Jake could see that the alien was struggling to understand what the humans were telling it. The hegemony had built their entire civilization on the idea that logical, controlled development was the only safe way for intelligent species to grow. The idea that chaos and unpredictability could be beneficial was completely foreign to them. "Commander," Jake said, "your species has been traveling between stars for thousands of years. In all that time, have you ever discovered anything truly new? Have you ever solved a problem that you thought was impossible?" Zix9 was quiet for several seconds. We have perfected existing technologies. We have improved efficiency and eliminated waste. But you've never innovated, Amy said. You've never broken the rules or tried something that seemed crazy. Breaking rules leads to chaos. Chaos leads to destruction. Lisa shook her head. Commander, I work in a hospital. I see chaos every day. Accidents, emergencies, situations that don't follow any plan. But I also see people who refuse to give up, who find ways to help each other even when everything seems hopeless. That's not destruction. That's humanity. Jake thought about the night at the ATM when Lisa had shown kindness to a stranger. That moment had led to everything that followed. The discovery of the alien signals, the development of the quantum disruptor, the organization of the resistance. None of it had been planned or logical. It had all happened because one person chose to be kind when she didn't have to be. Commander, Jake said, may I ask you a question? Zix9 nodded. In the 3,000 years that the hegemony has been, controlling other species, how many of those species have contributed anything new to your civilization? The alien was quiet again. Controlled species develop along predictable paths. They contribute resources and labor. But no new ideas, Amy said. No innovations. No solutions to problems you hadn't already solved. New ideas are dangerous. They can lead to unstable development patterns. Carl smiled. Commander, what do you think would happen if your species tried working with humans instead of controlling them? What if you learn from our chaos instead of trying to eliminate it? Zix9 looked at each of the humans again. This is not how first contact situations are supposed to develop. You should have surrendered to superior technology. You should have accepted our guidance. But we didn't, Lisa said. And now your ships are trapped, and you can't call for help. So maybe it's time to try something different. Jake could see that the alien commander was facing a decision that no member of the hegemony had ever had to make before. For thousands of years, they have followed the same patterns, the same rules, the same logical approach to dealing with other species. The humans had broken those patterns, and now the aliens had to choose between continuing to fight or trying. To understand, what do you propose? Zix9 asked finally. We fix your ships, Jake said. We restore your quantum communication systems and let you return to your home worlds. In exchange for what? Nothing, Amy said. We do it because it's the right thing to do. Zix9 stared at her. That is not logical. You have defeated us. You could demand anything you wanted. We could, Lisa said. But that's not who we are. We don't want to control you any more than we want you to control us. The alien commander was quiet for a long time. Finally, it spoke again. If we return to our home worlds, the Hegemony Council will want to know what happened here. They will want to study your species and find ways to counter your unpredictable behavior. Let them try, Carl said. Commander, we've been dealing with people who think they're smarter than us for our entire history. Kings, dictators, experts who say something can't be done. But we're still here, and we're still finding new ways to surprise them. Jake stepped closer to the alien. Commander, your species has spent 3,000 years trying to create a perfect controlled galaxy. But maybe what the galaxy really needs is a little chaos. Maybe it needs species that break rules and try impossible things, and refuse to give up when everything seems hopeless. Zix9 looked up at the alien ship hanging in the sky above them. The Hegemony Council will not understand this. They will see your species as a threat that must be contained. Then maybe it's time for the hegemony to learn something new, Amy said. 3 weeks later, Jake stood at the same ATM where everything had started. The alien ships had been repaired and had departed Earth, carrying with them a message that would change the galaxy forever. Some species, the message said, could not be controlled or predicted. Some species thrived on chaos and turned it into progress. Lisa walked up behind him, now wearing the uniform of Earth's first ambassador to extraterrestrial affairs. Any word from the hegemony? She asked. Zix-9 sent a message yesterday. Jake sighed. Apparently, 3 different species have declared independence from hegemony control in the past month. They wanted to try developing their own technologies without supervision. And the Hegemony Council? Jake smiled. Confused. They're trying to figure out how to deal with a galaxy that's suddenly becoming unpredictable. Lisa laughed. Good. Maybe they'll learn that trying to control everything isn't as smart as they thought. As they walked away from the ATM, Jake thought about all the impossible things that had happened over the past 2 years. A failed businessman had discovered an alien invasion. A nurse's kindness had sparked a chain of events that saved the world. Human creativity had defeated technology. That was thousands of years more advanced that none of it should have worked. All of it had been impossible, but that Jake realized was exactly what made it human. Above them, Earth's first interstellar ships were being launched toward distant stars, carrying explorers who would show the galaxy what happened when impossible became possible. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Sometimes